There was a guy who was arguably the best defensive player high school basketball has ever seen. He even had 17 steals in one game. So, what happened to this guy? Jaelen House. If the name doesn't sound familiar, well, it should. He was one of the most aggressive players that we have ever seen on the defensive side of the ball in high school. If he had any chance of getting a steal, he was going after it. But to get into this guy's story, let's throw it all the way back to where things started. When Jaelen was just a kid, he was always around basketball and around basketball legends. And a huge part of that was because his father was no other than Eddie House. Now, if you don't know who Eddie House is, just know that he was a pretty successful NBA basketball player. And Eddie House also thrived in college basketball as well. He even recorded 61 points in a double overtime victory for Arizona State. 61 points is pretty impressive. I don't care what level you do it on. Jaelen's father wound up playing for 9 NBA teams during his 11-year stint in the NBA. And a little fun fact to throw in there, Jaelen House's mother is the sister of the NBA star, Mike Bibby. So, I guess you could say basketball is just in their blood. And when Jaelen was younger, he was always around these NBA players and just basketball in general. So with that being said, that was a big influence on his game and future. But, with Eddie House playing for multiple different teams in the NBA, they was constantly on the move. And for most kids growing up and trying to make friends, this would seem like a problem. However, this was not a problem for Jaelen House because his father even goes on to say he's a social butterfly. And I think if you watch Jaelen House in high school, you could tell that he's not shy, so this did not affect him at all. But right after 2011, Jaelen's father did retire from the NBA, and the family wound up moving to Phoenix. And then this is where, in 2015, Jaelen decided to attend Shadow Mountain High School. Now with Jaelen just being a freshman and a powerhouse of a program, it didn't look like he was going to play right away. But he had other things to say about that. As just a freshman, Jaelen House made an immediate impact. Out of 32 games played, he wound up averaging right at 9.3 points per game. And with being a freshman and playing for a very solid team on varsity, that's a pretty impressive stat. But for Jaelen House, there was other things that stuck out about his game. He averaged 1.7 assists, 2.3 rebounds, and he nearly averaged 3 steals per game. Now I know it may not sound like a lot on paper, but 3 steals per game is a lot. And it was Jaelen House's aggressiveness on defense that helped lead his team to a state championship just as a freshman. And going into his sophomore season, this is really when he started to turn heads. His sophomore year is when these numbers really started to jump off the page. He skyrocketed his points all the way up to 22.3 per game. And to add to that, he brought his assist all the way up to almost 5 and his rebounds to 3.9 per game. But once again, for Jaelen House, none of those stats are what stuck out the most. This is not made up, this is the official stat for his sophomore season. Jaelen House averaged 5.8 steals per game. 5.8. I don't think you quite understand how incredible and absurd that is. That is literally 6 extra possessions a game. So with those crazy and absurd stats just thrown out there, this is when a lot of people started to take notice. And oh yeah, I almost forgot to mention, he also led his team to another state championship. So that's back to back for Jaelen House. And keep in mind, he's just a sophomore. And heading into his junior season, people expected nothing less from Jaelen House. As a freshman and sophomore, no one really expected these kind of numbers out of him, so there wasn't any pressure. But once you start putting up great numbers your first 2 seasons, this is when people start to just expect it out of you. So I guess it actually would be fair to say that there was some pressure on Jaelen House to bring a 3rd straight championship to his team. And for his junior year, and long story short, he did just that. He led his team to an overall 25-2 record and its 3rd straight championship. His stats were very similar to his sophomore year stats, but one thing he did increase was his steals once again. He jumped his steals up from 5.8 to 6.6 per game. Once again, just an unreal and unbelievable stat. I just cannot stress to you guys enough how insane 6.6 steals per game is. That's unreal and unheard of. But out of all of his numbers and accomplishments his junior year, this might have been the biggest one. In December of 2017, which is his junior year, he decided to commit to Arizona State. Like I told you in the beginning of the video, that is where his father played his college basketball at. And there was a lot of people saying that that's why Jaelen decided to go there, because his father played there. And even if that was the reason, there's not a problem with it. But Jaelen did go on to say, and he did insist, that he made a decision on my own. Now, of course, that's what most college athletes say when they go to a program where their father went to. But for me personally, it's just really hard for me to believe that he chose to go there for no other than his father played there. But regardless, in either way, he also did go on to state that I felt like it's the right fit for me. He also added to that, I love the coaching staff. And if I'm being completely honest, Arizona State did seem like a good fit for him at the time. So after committing to Arizona State and bringing home his third straight championship his junior year, he had one thing left in store, and that was no other than his senior season. And once again, with heavy expectations landed on Jaelen House, he delivered. He averaged 21.6 points, 5.3 assists, and 3.8 rebounds per game. And you really thought I wasn't going to mention his steals? Well, you're wrong. He averaged 5.7 steals per game. So once again, another incredible season on the defensive side of the ball as well. And Jaelen House and his team brought home that fourth straight championship. So Jaelen House went 4 for 4 on championship runs in his high school career, which is remarkable just itself. And all throughout his high school career, he was showing that he can do more things than just score. He could rebound, he could pass, and of course, he could play defense. So it really looked like his game was going to transfer pretty well over to the next level. And let's just say that hasn't exactly happened. Now keep in mind, I'm not saying this guy is a bust whatsoever. He's just a freshman, but his numbers haven't progressed over from high school just yet. For his first season for Arizona State, which is currently right now, he's only played in 14 games. And in those games, he's only averaging about 7 points, 3 rebounds, and 2 assists each and every night. And quite frankly, for a freshman, he's actually playing a lot. His overall field goal percentage from the field isn't too hot. He's only shooting about 33% from the field. However, his 3-point percentage is pretty good for just a freshman. He's shooting right at 31% from deep. And I know, you guys are like, yo Matt, is he getting a lot of steals as well? Well, let's get into that. He's actually averaging right at 2 steals per game. And for college, that's really good. But however, when I praise these players, I also have to give them criticism as well when they deserve it. So with that being said, yes, he is averaging right at 2 steals per game. But he's also averaging right at 1.5 turnovers per game. So it kind of evens out. Even though he's not putting up those crazy stats and numbers he was putting up in high school, I definitely think he's having a pretty good year so far. And here's why. Number one is he's just a freshman and the year isn't even over yet. So he has time to increase and improve these numbers. But also, with that being said, keep in mind he also has time to decrease these numbers as well. So just keep that in mind. And number two, and the most important thing is, he's just a freshman. So I'm obviously going to cut this guy some slack and give him time to grow into the program. Sometimes we put way too much pressure on our top high school players when they become freshmen, because we got to keep in mind that not everyone is Zion Williamson. Not everyone is going to put up 30 in high school and come into college and put up 30 as just a freshman. It's really rare and it doesn't happen a lot. There is a few rare cases though where that does happen, so it's not out of the ordinary. I'm really not sure if Jaelen House will put up the numbers he put up in high school or even become that player he was in high school again. But one thing I will tell you is that I wouldn't give up on this guy because he's shown that he can put up crazy stats and just explode out of nowhere. Jaelen House. He hasn't always had these big expectations, but once he started putting up big numbers and stats, he immediately got them. So can he regain and meet up with those expectations? But hey man, with all this being said, that's about gonna wrap up this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you guys learned something. If you are new to the channel, what are you doing? Join the family, hit that subscribe button, and leave a like for more. Thank you guys for all the support. It really means a lot. Without further ado, let's be great. I'm out, y'all. Peace.